What's up, Adam?
Hey, how's it going, Sam? Got a little background music to start this Inside Nobody session?
I like it. I like it.
Nice. Well, I welcome everybody to another episode of Inside Nobody. I'm Adam Bragg. I'm the VP here of the Idea Lab at Nobody Studios, and I've got Sam Stubbs here who is working with me to bring all of these ideas to life. Sam, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Great to have everybody here. My name's Sam. I'm also on the team in the Idea Lab. I have experience facilitating innovation in a variety of contexts, from startups to entrepreneurial communities, and excited to get to work with Adam on this exciting new venture of being this early stage engine for the rest of Nobody Studios. And I won't say too much now because we're going to get into it in the rest of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're having a lot of fun in Idea Lab. We're driving a lot of what we're doing here at Nobody Studios, which just as a reminder to everybody, Nobody Studios is a crowd-infused, high-velocity venture studio that's really leveraging the crowd and most recent technology to accelerate company building and get ideas out of nobody's heads into reality and really make an impact onto billions of people around the world. And so, Sam, why don't you start off by giving, we've had a lot of conversations about Idea Lab, ideas generally. Why don't you go ahead and kind of explain what Idea Lab is and what we've been working on so far?
Yeah, so Idea Lab, in the larger context of Nobody Studios, we're the initial front door for any new idea, whether it be a problem, a solution, just kind of general wondering you have, insight you have about the world. We're going to be the starting point for that. And what we do with those ideas is we want to articulate them out into a clear format that anybody can understand. If an alien came down here, they would be able to understand what's the problem you're trying to solve and what's the vision you have for this idea. And then what we do with those ideas is we break them into experiments, small things we can stand up quickly, test, anything from technical viability of an idea to market viability. Do people want this? How many people want this? And with that experiment data, we're able to have some backing to be able to show the later stage teams at the studio, hey, these are the markers we got for this idea. And those concept and launch stage teams are able to say, here's the ones we want to elevate and put more time into based on the metrics we're able to get from turning all your wildest ideas that we care about into quick little experiments and knowledge that we're able to build off of.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go deeper into all of those stages throughout this live stream. But the title of this live stream, we put it together as "Nobody Cares About Your Ideas," and it's a cheeky pun about ideas, but really we care about the ideas that come to us, and we care about them so much that we don't want to be the arbiters of good. We don't want to say whether an idea is good or bad, mainly because we have limited knowledge, expertise in all of the different fields, but what we can do is build a system that allows for those ideas to go and speak for themselves to through experiments, through sort of rapid movement and iteration in the early days. We can test underlying assumptions that give us at the studio conviction about an idea, whether or not it could survive in the market. And maybe you can talk a little bit about how we have been noodling about how to build that system, what kinds of experiments, what kinds of things we can put into place to really allow ideas to show nobodies that they're good.
Totally, yeah, great point, Adam. And what the Idea Lab is it's not just me and Adam coming up with a bunch of ideas. We've got ideas, but ideally, we're just a small section of this huge crowd of nobodies, from our investors to our team internally, but really just anybody that is part of this live stream, part of any of our past media streams, and just anybody that is touched by this studio in any way. You're part of our crowd, and we want to hear your ideas. In fact, the farther you are from us, the more we want to hear your ideas because it's not something we would be likely to come up with ourselves. And furthermore, we dip our toe into a bunch of different verticals. Two of our big ones right now are health and wellness and new media. And we like to say that those as we're developing ideas, insights might come from a vertical we don't necessarily expect. So maybe we're building a new media platform, and our health and wellness director, Dr. Eric, has the insight on how streaming affects the brain, and that impacts the new media company in a way we wouldn't have expected. Um, and in terms of what comes next after, we just want to have that huge open funnel at the top for all these ideas to come in. We're really looking for a couple of things. One is what is the problem that you're trying to solve and who is affected by it? Is it you? Is it somebody you know? Is it society at large? Is it a specific community? Um, who is the person experiencing the problem necessarily the person that would use the solution, or are there multiple stakeholders involved? And then the second thing is, we would start by solving a point problem, but any idea we create, we want to, scale that impact too. So what's your broader vision for what's the new reality this idea can create? More than just solving a point problem in someone's life, but what's the bigger play of how this idea can be used to change the world?
Yeah, definitely breaking ideas down into their core assumptions, sort of the and then creating hypotheses around proving and disproving those.
Yeah,
Um, that's really big for us in Idea Lab, and it's special at Nobody Studios because we have a lot of different verticals that we play in. Being able to have a validated assumption in one vertical that might inform another, generally because of how we're looking at people's behavior, because of we're trying to see what activates a certain demographic, and we're able to share those learnings across verticals, and allow us to be really fun and playful in the early days of company creation. And ultimately the metrics that we're trying to find that show whether or not something is a viable idea. They're sort of the same as traditional metrics. We're trying to find, will someone pay for this? Does this solve a problem or add enough value to somebody to get them to pay, or to get them to sign up and say they would pay? And ultimately, it's like breaking an idea down to its fundamental piece of value, and saying, how can we offer that in a really manual way, or in a way that's really fast, and just to show us that at the studio that an idea is good. And so when someone brings an idea at that top of the funnel, that's kind of how the system is put into place. We, as quickly as possible, using either manual processes or some AI fun stuff that we've been implementing on the background, getting to some core set of assumptions about an idea, about whether or not it would work, and then going and testing that out, in as fast and progressive a way as possible. And hopefully we've got 10 people who, at the end of a week or two of just working with somebody who's brought in an idea or some ideas internally, we've got 10 people who are paying, and they love that idea. If it's not a full-blown application, it might be for a PDF, how-to guide or something like that. That's just a basic level provision of value through that idea. And so maybe you can talk a bit about how we're thinking about, like, you know problems too. Like, we're nobody cares about your ideas, but I think nobody cares about your problems too.
totally. Yeah, I think you make a great point, and about kind of testing against hypotheses, and I think really what an idea comes down to is a set of hypotheses and potentially assumptions. Um, Basically, any idea you have, let's say you're trying to create an electric unicycle, you probably have some problem in mind that people are having trouble getting to work in a fun way, and you have a solution in mind that's people would spend money on this unicycle, and you have a technical assumption in mind that you know the unicycle could charge in 30 minutes or something. And so instead of just having these guesses and these ideas, what we want to do is move to knowledge. And so going back to your point about problems are a big thing we want to test. The way we test those is a couple ways. One is just talking to people, having these kind of blind, solution neutral, problem neutral conversations with different people in the industry or in the problem area. Um, are you having trouble getting to work? Are you maybe even going more broad than that? What's the most annoying part of your day? What's the most annoying part of your commute? And, we'll learn one or two things. We'll either learn we were right or we were wrong, or we'll learn they have another problem that's different from what we originally thought, but it's actually something we can dig in deeper and solve. Um, and yeah, I'd love to riff on that with you if you got anything else to say.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we've got a comment in here from Yesenia. Customer discovery never ends, and that's really true. And it's sort of like if you're an independent entrepreneur, you're sort of on your own, building things. You're sort of having to go through that process individually. Maybe you're adding to your personal knowledge base about how people act, what people get activated for, how people think about ideas and solutions, how people are solving their problems today. But one of the cool things with the studio and being crowd infused is that we can collect a knowledge base across verticals, across user personas, and use and leverage that crowd to accelerate our customer discovery process. And maybe we can talk a little bit about that and riff for a couple of minutes on that, Sam. Like how have you
Yeah,
seen us doing that so far? What kind of things are we implementing in the system so that we can leverage that crowd, so that we can get faster, better results, and then repurpose and recycle that knowledge in the knowledge base?
totally, totally. Yeah, so two parts on that. One is kind of back to that point I was making on, hypotheses we test, experiments we run. We might be right or wrong or find out something entirely new. And, no matter whether that knowledge is useful to the current thread of thought that we're going down, that knowledge might be useful for a future idea later on. So every experiment we run, every conversation we have, all of that contributes to a collective knowledge base of the studio that we're then able to, keep on the shelf and repurpose whenever we have new ideas that need new knowledge. Not necessarily new knowledge, old knowledge, so we don't have to go relearn it. And then on the note of the power of the crowd, um, one way we want to get to knowledge quickly from moving from a hypothesis to an answer is instead of just me and Adam shooting something out to 10 people we know, we have this dense crowd of really not just the people in the studio and not just our stakeholders, but all of their networks too, and anybody that's really caught a glimpse of this studio is part of this crowd. So instead of let's say Adam and I are trying to start a dog salon, and we're in like the pet care business. We might be able to reach out to 10 people. One of them has an insight on what we're looking for. They reach out to 10 more people. Two of them know what we're looking for. So it takes 2 degrees of connection just to get to three insights that are all kind of in this pet care industry. But instead, what if we tapped into the power of our crowd? So we went to our health and wellness director, Dr. Eric, and he knows somebody that's in like pet biology that knows something about this. And we go to our CTO, AL, and he knows a chemical engineer who knows about um, the processes by which dog grooming is most efficient. And we go to our somebody else in our studio who's a dog owner, and they know it from that experience. And now, immediately, just from 1 degree of separation, we already have three insights. And they're from three different disciplines. They're not just from our immediate kind of network. It's it's an interdisciplinary approach. We get to it quicker because we have such a dense crowd. We get a more diverse knowledge base. We're able to inform this idea more thoroughly and more quickly, and able to make a more informed decision on what we want to do next with this idea.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I love the idea too. Mark, our chief nobody, has a pup named Chloe, and I know that Chloe would love that idea too of the dog salon. We've got to put a nobody twist on it, but it's sort of like in all out of the let's keep in theme of pets. So we created CatGPT, and one of the things that one of the biggest learnings from CatGPT was like, if it was originally thought of in the Idea Lab, it might have been seen as sort of a silly solution or silly problem. There's not really like anything anything major about it, but we put it out there, and in a couple of months it had 1 million users, and that was like a signal to us. There's something here. There's something in this idea, some underlying assumptions about how people behave, what people get activated from that we can then repurpose into some of our other existing new codes or into new ideas that we come up and think of in the idea lab. So it's sort of like in the idea lab, we're putting a lot of seeds out in the field. We're watching them grow, and we're seeing which ones grow fastest, and all of them tell us something. We're running experiments on, which ones, need more marketing, which ones, what user personas get activated the most and by what, and then we're repurposing that information into a system that then accelerates every other idea. And so, like, speed and optimizing for speed, using the crowd to optimize for speed. Why are we so kind of focused on acceleration in the idea lab? Why is speed and acceleration so big for us here, Sam, based on the combos that we've had?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, there's no shortage of ideas out there in the world, but a lot of them sit on a box, sit on a shelf, never kind of get anywhere. Whereas, the quicker we can, put something into reality, whether it's, a landing page, whether it's a customer discovery conversation, whether it's a tech spike trying to prove technical viability, um, then we can, either take that idea off the shelf, dust it off, put a new one on there, or move it to actually using it instead of just sitting there. And the quicker we can do that, the more we can add to this knowledge base quickly to be able to inform future ideas, but the more material we're going to have to accelerate or elevate these ideas to the later stages of the studio, like concept and launch, where our goal there is to develop as many um, impactful, viable, sustainable businesses as possible. And we can't do that unless we have a bunch of these little seedling trees of ideas that Adam's talking about. And so the best way we can, increase the odds that some of these are going to stick is by doing as many as possible. And the way to do as many as possible is to do it as fast as possible.
I love that. Yeah, you're condensing as many learnings in as tight a space as possible. It goes right in line with what we're thinking about at the studio, being frugressive, frugal, plus aggressive equals frugressivity, which is creativity, creative approaches. You're sort of packing ideas in, and you're working on as many as possible to get those signals. I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. I know we both have a ton of philosophical conversations with each other and the outside world about ideas. We see people talking about ideas all the time. Um, how have you seen ideas be best articulated? And, like, here at the studio, what kinds of how are we looking to communicate ideas with the world, based on what we've learned and seen, so that they get the best pickup and the best reaction, we can learn the most from them?
Totally. I think I'll put it this way. I think the number one thing that comes between an idea and, being able to communicate it is the assumptions made in the initial articulation of an idea. So really, when you want to communicate an idea, you might say, um, you might think you're articulating a problem, but you might be assuming what the problem is in the way you're stating it. And I think the biggest thing is to try to tease out, okay, what am I assuming? And, it's not just saying, oh, well, because I assume this, that doesn't make it a good idea. No, it's still useful. We just need to know what are kind of the actions being made so that we can test those going in. Um, and I think that's kind of the biggest thing. So it's once you're able to tease that out, you're able to see what is your hypothesis of the problem. And it's kind of also, it's a very low pressure, early stage thing of like, we want your hypothesis of the problem. We don't need you to prove to us all the way at the beginning that it is a problem. That's the job of the system that we're building in the idea lab is to test out these hypotheses. But we want to know what is the thing that you think is a problem and you think it's a big problem, and we're going to test how much of a problem, how big of a problem it is.
Yep.
What's your approach to solving it? And just having a clear link between that solution and how it solves a problem, not just, oh, I'm going to make an app. Well, how is that app going to solve the problem? If you can articulate that, that's going to be perfect for us. The last thing we look for is kind of the significance to you and to the world and to this point in time. So why does this matter? Why does it matter now? Why does this matter to you? You can make an emotional argument, you can make a logical argument, really just whatever that thing is that's driving the conviction for you. We want to hear about that. We want to hear what's making you excited about it, and why the rest of us should be excited about it too.
Yeah. You said earlier, like being able to articulate an idea in a way that, if an alien came down and talked and was like, what is
Yeah,
your startup idea? That it was clear enough and the assumptions weren't being made that that person had background knowledge of that idea. And I think it's sort of like, it's can you explain this idea in a sentence, and can anybody who comes in, from can anybody in the crowd, regardless of their domain expertise, latch on to the problem, understand it clearly enough, and have some take on it. Their take might be, I've already seen a few things about this, like, an app for social networking. It might be like, I've seen an idea exactly like this, but or it might be like, that's a really great niche to approach, social networking for student athletes or some other kind of like specific niche. But being able to put a dart on the board and say, specifically, this is the idea, and it allows us to capture, to put a rod in the ground to capture the feedback from the crowd to get us somewhere moving forward. Again, the work of the Idea Lab is not really um, to produce the commercial company that goes on and at the exit of Idea Lab is able to be, you know super well funded. The goal is to start the beginning stages of that process, to find conviction where it oftentimes is really hard in those early days of company generation. It's really hard for an individual to even know if their idea is good, but by having this system in place to where we've got a really clear idea of how to articulate ideas, we've got a clear way of testing those through experiments and testing those underlying assumptions, and then we've got a north star about what is it that means good to us in the Idea Lab, and then we can push it on to Frugressive proper to go and actually make it a commercially viable solution there. So, there's another comment from Yesenia. I love these. So she says, "What's a shark bite versus a mosquito bite, and who is getting bitten?" I love this because it's like, you know, one's a bite, like one's
yeah,
obviously more serious than the other, but you have to be able to, even then, like you have the assumption that one's a shark and one's a mosquito, and by articulating that, you're like you're assuming that somebody knows the difference between a shark and a mosquito. And so it's like, how can you, maybe we'll sort of like start closing the conversation here on getting grounded on, like, if somebody wants um to bring an idea forward to the lab, and also what people can expect from us as a lab. How are ideas being framed? What is a good example of, like, on the court example of what a good idea is? Maybe Sam, you can come off the cuff here and just say, what's a good idea? Give us a good idea.
totally. Okay, I want to riff on your example of like a social media for athletes. So, if I know nothing about the space and somebody comes and tells me the problem is there's not a social media for athletes, I'm going to say, why is that a problem? And if somebody says, okay, well, there's not a centralized place for athletes to communicate with each other and form community, well, I'm going to ask, why is that a problem? And maybe this person with the idea is going to tell me, well, there's a lot of isolation and loneliness in the athlete community. And I'm like, okay, well, why is that a problem? Well, it's affecting mental health and physical health and athletic performance. Okay, so that's drilled down to what is the actual problem and why it's important now. So what we would love to see is really what is the underlying thing that people value that is the reason that's motivating all these chains down the list of your idea. And, maybe the solution is a social media for athletes, but maybe it's something completely different. Maybe it's in-person events for athletes. Maybe it's asynchronous resources for athletes to read each other's stories. We don't want to prescribe what that solution is. We want to hear what your idea of the solution is because we want to run the experiments on that. But we also want to be open and neutral to other avenues for solving the problem. Because at the end of the day, what we all want to do is solve the problem. We want to make everybody's life better. So I think the closer you can get to articulating what is the value that people have that we want to create, we want to add for them. And then we still want to hear all those links down the chain of, how do you think we should solve this? What do you think it implies? But instead of just going way down and implying all these assumptions, we want to hear the whole chain and we want to test every single part of it.
Yep, definitely. That sort of brings up a thought where, we've named this talk "Nobody Cares About Your Ideas," but we'll be diving a lot deeper in the Idea Lab, with this thread of "Nobody Cares About Your Problems," and it really is going to be sort of an initiative at the Idea Lab level where we're wanting to capture people's problems. Tell us about, what's frustrating in your workflows, what's frustrating in your day, what's affecting you. And causing an impact on your day to day, so that we can add that to our knowledge base and try to solve them. And it's sort of, it goes back to the value, adding value to somebody's life, to people's lives. At the studio, that's sort of fundamental for what we're trying to do. We're trying to make positively impacting companies. And we talk maybe, you guys, everybody, all the listeners can follow can go and follow and get a newsletter from the studio, because we'll be talking a little bit about this in a blog post. But this idea of like solving problems versus creating realities, new positive realities in the world. Donald Farmer, of Nobody Studios, is really influential in this space. But it's like, how can we, some of the questions that we're asking ourselves in the Idea Lab is, how can we understand problems at a really fundamental level so that we know what people are experiencing, come up with new novel ways of solving those problems, and ultimately using the crowd, using what we're building here at Nobody Studios to create new realities for people in the world, through the products that we create, through the experiences that we create. So, thank you, Sam, today for joining and talking about all of this at the Idea Lab. We're going to be having a lot of really fun, exciting updates. If there's any closing thoughts, Sam, let me know. I'll leave the floor for you, and then we'll wrap it up.
Totally, yeah. I think just kind of continuing on this idea of, solving a problem and also changing reality. Adam and I had this tug of war of, which is more important, and we kind of came to this conclusion: you need both. You don't really have a business without solving a problem. That's why we run these experiments, like, seeing ChatGPT got a ton of clicks, or something getting its first couple customers. Like, that's really important, and that proves that a problem is solved. But also, you kind of want to show what can people aspire to, what's the new reality that's created by this idea. And that kind of is increases our level of conviction in an idea, and the ability that this is going to stick. So it's kind of two ingredients that kind of show different aspects of, what makes a good idea, but both are necessary. And we're just going to keep um, experimenting and adding to our knowledge base of what makes a good idea. And we're excited to have all of you along for the ride too.
Absolutely. And Sam, we got a comment here from Tiffany. She says, "Welcome to the studio. We're thrilled to have you join. I can't wait to see how the Idea Lab evolves with you here." And I'm going to echo that. Of these types of conversations are conversations that me and Sam are having, on a daily basis. And we're really excited to have you here, Sam, and excited about what we're building at the Idea Lab. So thanks everybody for joining in, and stay tuned. I think we've got another episode of the making of a nobody this upcoming week. So thanks again, Sam, for joining. Thanks all of the listeners and the viewers. And let's go make some cool ideas happen. We care about nobody's ideas.
Let's do it. Yes, we do care about those ideas. Thanks so much, Adam.
All right. Thanks, Sam.